Nacho Talk.
Oh boy, here we go. Didn't have my mic unmuted. Okay, 3, 2. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Nacho Talk, but not any normal episode. This one right here, this is a special episode of Nacho Talk. See, this week, I don't have a guest. It's just me, just old Nacho guy, Nacho man. I Not that I didn't have anybody to get on, I just didn't ask anybody to get on this week. Can't tell you why. um, and I've had this idea to do this, like, so these solo type episodes for a little while, where I'm gonna talk a little bit about what's going on, I suppose, and then like some updates, and then I want to read some horror stories, some good old Reddit horror stories. I've been trying to get into my narration voice acting bag, um, really this past like kind of year, you know. Um, that by the way, guys, if you need somebody to voice act on anything, if you need this voice range, hit a boy up. I got you. But yeah, we're gonna read a few Reddit horror stories. But first, I want to go over a couple things real quick. We have a Patreon for the Nacho Talk, Nachoverse, everything. It's just $2 a month, and you can get all Nacho Talk episodes early, including other special projects early, like main channel videos, everything like ideas I have, like things I have going on. There's so many like benefits too. There's a higher tier which you don't need to pay for, but just $2, and you can get everything early. You can add to the content. You can suggest new things. You can work with me on stuff. Um, yeah, I just want to put that out there. Uh, if you want to, you don't have to. It's cool. It's in the description. Whatever. Um, Make sure to go sub to my main channel and my second channel as well, and follow me on Twitch. We go live on there every now and again, and we post all the VODs on the second channel. New fun stuff on the main channel, every now and again as well. No real schedule over there like we do over here on Nacho Talk, guys. But that's really the only things I really want to talk about. I have a few like interesting um, commentary type videos I'm working on, like testing a new style of video on the main channel. So you'll be seeing some of those videos soon. But I guess without further ado, I'm gonna try my best to read these Reddit horror stories. This episode will more than likely not be nearly as long as a normal episode. So yeah, it's just a fun little thing. If you guys want more of this, cool. I'll definitely do it. I'm down. If you don't, that's fine. I'll just keep getting guests. Just whatever. I want to do what you guys want to see. I'll probably do more of this stuff eventually because I mean I enjoy it anyway. But with these stories I have here, I have three. Um, I think I'm gonna get to all of them. Now, I'm gonna try my best to read these. Some of these, like, on Reddit, some of these aren't written out the best way, and you know, I'm an okay reader. My reading level is grade 3. Just let's go, guys. This first one that I have pulled up. If you're watching the video, like I'm reflecting in these glasses heavy. I'm trying to use blue light glasses more because I have to look at computer screens 24/7. Um, do blue light glasses even work? Who knows? Doing it anyway. Whatever. All right. For the visual video viewers, this is going to be a little weird. For the audio viewers, it won't be much different. Or for the audio viewers, it won't be much different. It is a few days later. As I was reading the first story, I started having some technical difficulties, and just decided to stop and try again. And now we're at that point. Except I have a couple different stories than what I was originally going to read. Ones that are like written out a little better for me to read. Um, but yeah, one of them's the same. Two of them are different. I don't know if I'll get to all three because the number two and number three are pretty dang long. So we'll see. This is definitely going to be a shorter podcast episode, but thank you all for understanding. Or we're going to get more guests. I'm trying to link up with a guy in India, but it's like a 10-hour time difference, so we're working through that. Like I say before, or like, I don't know if I said it before, I can't remember. Like I say on my stories and everything on Instagram, if you want to be on, if you have somebody that you want on the podcast, don't be afraid to hit me up. I'm working on trying to reach out to people and stuff, and all different types. And, you know, you don't have to make music. You don't have to make YouTube videos. You can be anybody. I'm down to interview you. Um, so yeah, that's about it. Now that we're here, we will begin with the first story. Um, I was supposed to drown by Skull Knitter on r/short scary stories. Y'all ready for this? I think I am. Here we go. Let's get right into it. Concrete hardens quick around your ankles, but no one talks about how much it burns. It eats through your shoes, chews into the soles of your feet. But that was the least of my concerns. I sat at the stern of a small boat, perched over one of the deepest stretches of the ocean. Ooh, should have kept your mouth shut, Ricky, Tommy said, his lips slick with grease, his breath thick with a stale meat. A mouth breather, if there ever was one. Please, I'll feed the cops dirty info. Don't do this, I pleaded. Oh, this is a thing. This is a big thing. This is oh, okay. This is different. Behind him, I read that so nonchalantly. It's like, please, I'll feed the cops dirty info. Don't do this, I pleaded. That's a little better, I think. I don't know. Behind him, Reggie sat heavy in a seat, a cigar pinched between his thick fingers. He eyed me like I was nothing. Less than nothing. Just another problem to be dealt with. Nah. He exhaled smoke, watching it twist into the night air. Too late for that. Drop him. One push. That's all it took. I hit the water hard. My wrists were cuffed behind my back, and the current wrenched at them as the weight dragged me down. The pressure started at the base of my skull. My ears popped, pain blooming deep behind my jaw. Something clicked behind my eyes, swelling, a brutal, unnatural pressure. The light above shrank. The cold tightened its grip. Then the real pain began. The pressure in my ears became unbearable, invisible rods punching past my eardrums, churning into my cochlea into soup. Ugh. My skull felt like it was being crushed in a vice, my jaw pried apart by the forces not meant for human bones. When I throbbed, the socket loosening, ready to give. Still, I didn't die. Jesus. My lungs screamed for air, spasming with the need to breathe. Instinct won. I inhaled. Seawater flooded in, burning, choking, but it didn't end me. I kept sinking. The cold deepened. The weight of the ocean bore down, squeezing my ribs, pulling at my limbs. My ankles snapped under the force, the bones grinding apart inside the concrete. I felt my body break, felt my insides rupture, felt my mind slip past the edge of sanity from the agony. And yet I lived. I always lived. I couldn't drown, couldn't suffocate, couldn't be crushed or torn apart, no matter how deep I sank, no matter how much my body screamed for release. Minutes passed before the cement blocks struck something soft, primordial sludge, ancient and untouched. The blackness here was absolute. I wasn't dead. I would never be dead. Reggie hadn't banished me to the grave. He had sentenced me to something far worse. He didn't know I was immortal when he had shoved me off the boat. No one did. It was my dirty secret, a profane curse. I'd seen empires rise and crumble. I'd seen eternities come and go. Because down here in the crushing dark, I would never rot, never decay, never fade into nothing like a man should in the end. Instead, I would remain forever. And it didn't take long for me to realize I wasn't alone down there. Oh, what? Okay. So this person's immortal? Buddy, that's not real. That's awesome. Okay. A lot of people fuck with this story. Again, I was supposed to drown by Redditor Skull Knitter. I gotta pronounce that very correctly. Shoot. That's crazy. I was not expecting that at all. So that was cool. That was cool. I fucked with that. I think I'm getting better at reading stories. I enjoyed a lot. I enjoyed like voice acting and narrating and stuff. So I guess we can move on to the next story. Um, this next story actually has a second part to it, but both parts are like way too long to do in one episode. So maybe if you guys want to see another one of these, I can continue this second one on another episode. or maybe this one, depending on how well I read this. So this one is titled "It Wasn't a Girl," by Constant Diamond 4627 and the r/no sleep subreddit. Um, this one, like I said, is quite a bit longer than the other one. I'd say about 5 to 6 times, 7 times longer than the last one we just read. So this might be the only two, or these might be the only two I read for this episode. So again, if you guys want to see more or hear more of this, let me know. I'd be happy to like even read like audiobook type stuff, you know? Like maybe we read a book together or something one day. I think that'd be fun. I need to get better, or I'm trying to get better about reading. I'm trying to read more books. But without further ado, let's get into this one. It wasn't a girl. In my teenage years, my best friends were Julieta, Camilla, Natalia, and me. We were inseparable, not only at school but also outside of it. We spent time together, studied in groups, and, above all, gathered at Julieta's house, the most convenient meeting point for all of us. Julieta lived with her mother, her sister, her niece, and her grandmother in a 3-story house. They occupied the second floor, while the first was rented out and the third served as a terrace. One morning, during recess, Julieta called us urgently. Her face reflected concern and something else. Fear. We sat in a circle in the school's green area, and she began speaking to us in a low voice, as if someone else might hear her. For several nights, something strange has been happening to me. Ooh. We looked at each other, expectant. Julieta told us that lately she hadn't been able to sleep. She lay awake in her room, tossing and turning, unable to rest. One of those nights, thirst forced her to leave her room and go to the dining room, where the family kept a small refrigerator with cold drinks. The house was completely silent. She didn't want to make noise and wake her mother or grandmother, so she walked carefully. She opened the fridge, took out her water bottle, and began to drink, standing right in front of the appliance. Bleh. Then, she saw it. From the corner of her eye in the dimly lit living room, something caught her attention. Under a faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the window, she distinguished a white, motionless figure. She slowly turned her head, and there it was. A few meters away in the middle of the living room stood a little girl. She was small, no more than a meter tall. She wore light-colored pajamas, white with pink details. Her long hair was tied in a messy braid, with strands stuck to her forehead as if she'd been sweating. Julieta froze. Her gaze met with the girl's for a few seconds, but that was enough. A primal fear took hold of her, the deep terror of prey when it's facing its predator. Without thinking, she dropped the bottle, letting the water spill into the floor and ran back to her room. She slammed the door shut and hid under the blankets as if they could shield her from what she'd just seen. She waited. Nothing. No one in her house woke up from the noise. Not her mother, not her grandmother, not her sister. Everything remained in absolute silence. The next morning, she tried to convince herself that maybe her mind had played a trick on her, that her niece, the only child in the house, had gotten up at night and she had simply mistaken her for something else. But the doubt gnawed at her. When everyone was awake, Julieta asked her sister about her niece's white and pink pajamas. What pajamas? Her sister frowned. Oof. She pulled from the closet the only pajamas and those colors her daughter owned. They weren't the same. The pajamas of the girl Julieta had seen in the living room were a short-sleeved nightgown with pink details, but her niece's were completely different. A long-sleeved sweatshirt and pants set, in bright pink with white edges and a bear design in the center. A chill ran down Julieta's spine. It couldn't have been her niece. So what the hell had she seen that night? We fell silent. A shiver ran through us when Julieta finished her story. Natalia, wide-eyed and with trembling hands, scolded her for not telling her family sooner. Camilla, with a serious expression, asked if anything else had happened recently. Julieta, after a moment of hesitation, nodded. Since that night, she whispered, I haven't gone into the living room after dark. Not alone, not with anyone, but there was one time, 2 nights ago. Fuck. She paused. Her breath was heavier. She looked at each of us with the expression of someone who doesn't want to remember, but can't help it. One night, she continued, I couldn't hold it anymore. My bladder forced me to leave my room and go to the bathroom. She took a longer pause this time, as if reliving the moment. The bathroom was right next to the living room, and there's a small window that connects the hallway to the living room. From there, you can see everything. We shuddered. The mere idea of passing through that area seemed terrifying, but Julieta had no other choice. I walked in complete silence. She continued, with my bedroom light on, leaving the door open in case I had to run back. I closed my eyes almost completely. I didn't want to see. I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to know. She paused. Her throat moved as she swallowed. I entered the bathroom, and I made it. I was safe. But the worst was yet to come. When I finished, as I washed my hands, my mind was already on the way out. On the window. I didn't want to look. I shouldn't look. She took her hands. Her skin was cold. She took our hands. Her skin was cold. I took a step toward the door, and I heard it. Her voice cracked. It was a subtle sound, but clear, like when someone lightly scrapes the glass with their nails, like an insistent tapping, sharp. We shivered. I don't know when I did it, but I looked. Julieta lowered her head into her hands. She was there. Not me looking at my camera to make sure I'm alone. The image she described made us hold our breath. The girl had her face and hands pressed against the glass. Her pale skin was flattened against it. There was no distance between them. Her eyes were so close to the glass that they looked vicious. And her fingers, Julieta murmured, her fingers drummed against the window, over and over again. There was a long silence. She looked at us with an indescribable expression. The worst part was that I swear she smiled at me. Her voice trembled. I don't know how I got to my room, but when I shut the door, when I hid under the covers, that smile was in my mind. Oh, fuck. She looked at us again, and this time her expression was different. I felt mocked, she whispered, as if I'd fallen into a trap, as if that thing knew something I didn't. Oh, a knot of tension formed between us. By then, it wasn't just Natalia who was utterly terrified. Even Camilla, the bravest of us all, had lost her confident demeanor. Her look of disbelief spoke for itself. I, for my part, was caught in a crossroads between fear and fascination. I couldn't say I wasn't scared, but the fact that I wasn't experiencing it firsthand allowed me to maintain a fragile composure. Still, what unsettled me the most wasn't the story itself, but Julieta's endurance. How had she managed to bear all of this without telling her family? How could she continue living in that house with that presence lurking in the shadows? Recess ended, and we returned to class, our minds still trapped in what we just heard. We had 4 long hours before we could go home, but the sense of unease never left us. Every now and then our eyes met, sharing a silence filled with unanswered questions. Days passed, and in our project methodology class, we were assigned the task of developing a theoretical framework for our graduation research. As usual, we agreed to meet at Julieta's house to work on it in that afternoon. After school, we decided to make a quick stop to buy some snacks. Between laughs, we picked up ice cream and cookies, unconsciously trying to convince ourselves that it would be just another ordinary afternoon. When we arrived at Julieta's house, her grandmother greeted us with the same warmth as always. She had known us for years, and in a way, she was a grandmother to all of us. She welcomed us tenderly and offered us lunch, an offer we gladly accepted. We moved to the dining table, chatting about trivial things. That's when I noticed it. Julieta had a distant look, lost in time and space, fixed on a point beyond the dining room. Her eyes were locked on the living room, on the very spot where she had seen the girl. In that instant, I understood what was going through her mind. A sharp pang of anxiety shot through me, and almost without thinking, I reached out and took her hand. I squeezed it gently, in a silent attempt to offer support. Julieta blinked and turned her face toward me. Her expression was a mixture of gratitude and distress, as if simply being there was an unbearable weight. I understood. Of course, I understood. It was at that moment that a chill ran down my spine. Suddenly I became aware of where we were, of the walls surrounding us, of the light streaming through the windows, of the door leading to the living room, of Julieta's story and the presence that inhabited that house. I swallowed hard and turned my gaze back to my plate, trying to push away the dark thoughts creeping into my mind. I just hoped nothing bad would happen that day. We finished lunch, washed our dishes and utensils, and headed to Julieta's room. There, as always, we settled around her desk, ready to focus on our research. However, the feeling of unease lingered. That was when Julietta's grandmother knocked on the door and peeked in to tell us she was going to pick up Julietta's niece from school and would be back soon. We said goodbye normally, but as soon as her figure disappeared through the front door, the awareness of our solitude settled over us like a heavy shadow. The house was empty. There was no one else. We exchanged glances, and it was Camilla who broke the silence with a sensible warning. We needed to focus. We tried, and for a while it worked. More than half an hour of peace passed before something shattered that fragile balance. A faint tapping, weak but clear, coming from the bedroom window. Whew. We turned our heads in unison towards the sound and looked at Julietta. She frowned and, in a firm voice, asked Camilla to accompany her. Camilla, without hesitation, got up and pulled the curtain aside. Nothing. There was nothing there, but the silence that followed was no relief. Suddenly, louder, more than insistent knocks, this time from the adjacent wall. Who sleeps there? I asked. Julietta looked at me with a grim expression. No one. That room is empty. My dad only uses it when he visits, but it hardly ever happens. Possibilities swirled in my mind. Had someone broken in? Was Julietta's niece playing a prank? But something didn't add up. Camilla grew restless and decided to go check. Natalia begged her not to, but she didn't hesitate. She stepped out and left the door slightly ajar. The seconds stretched endlessly until she returned looking confused. There's no one, she said. I checked the other room and it's empty. So is Julietta's niece's room. No one. As she spoke, Julietta noticed something behind her. The door leading to the living room, which had been closed before, was now slightly open. And the gap, a shadow. It had no defined shape, but it was two colors. Black and white. Julietta pulled out her phone, switched to the video mode, and zoomed in. We huddled behind her, watching the screen intently. And then, the shadow moved. Just a slight shift, but enough to make the door move with it. Natalia let out a strangled gasp, and with that, panic erupted. We all screamed in unison, except for Camilla, who ran to the bedroom door and slammed it shut. When she turned to face us, she found us all huddled together on Julietta's bed. Calm down, she ordered firmly. But before she could say anything else, the attack resumed. Knocks, this time on both the window and the adjacent wall, simultaneously. It could no longer be a prank. It was impossible for someone to be in two places at once. It was impossible, at least for a human being. Natalia broke into sobs. I want to get out of here. I glanced at my phone. It was 5 in the afternoon. I had to leave too, but the thought of stepping out of that room paralyzed me. We decided to stop working and turn on the TV for distraction. No one spoke. No one moved. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Oof. A knock at the door made us jump, but this time it was Julietta's grandmother. She peeked in with a warm smile. I'm back, girls. I brought fresh fruit for you. Behind her, Julietta's niece clung timidly to her skirt. She greeted us sweetly and ran into Julietta's arms. Did you just get here? Julietta asked. Yes, the little girl replied. Grandma popped me some ice cream on the way, so we took a little longer. We looked at each other, our hearts pounding in our throats. There had been no one in the house. No one. But something had been with us the whole time. With Julietta's family home, the air in the room felt lighter, but the tension didn't fully dissipate. Julietta, feeling a renewed sense of security, finally stepped out of the room. Natalia, however, was still trembling. Her fear was palpable, and her tear-filled eyes reflected as a primal urgency. She wanted to run. I'm not staying here any longer, she whispered shakily, staring at the door as if expecting something to appear at any moment. Camilla and I tried to calm her down. We told her it would be rude to leave abruptly, especially when Julietta's grandmother had taken the trouble to prepare something for us. But Natalia insisted. She clung to the sleeve of my sweater like a terrified child, and the trembling in her hands sent shivers down my spine. Eventually, we convinced her to stay, at least until we finished our snack. The grandmother returned with plates of fresh fruit and juice. The sounds of utensils scraping against the dishes broke an uneasy silence, but it wasn't enough to ease our thoughts. Everything that had happened was still imprinted in our minds with terrifying clarity. Each bite felt heavy, as if our throats refused to swallow. I was the first to speak. Julietta, you have to tell them what's happening. You can't keep this to yourself. She immediately shook her head, pressing her lips together. I don't want to scare my mom or my grandma, she muttered, staring at her plate, or murmured. Something inside me ignited. And what if it happens again tonight? I said, not sugarcoating my words. We'll go home and sleep soundly, but you'll stay here, alone, with that. Do you really want to keep ignoring it? Julietta glared at me, but her eyes welled up with tears. She knew I was right. Her stubbornness was only condemning to her face whatever lurked in that house alone. Finally, she sighed, and in a trembling voice whispered, Okay, tonight when my mom gets home, I'll tell them everything. We finished eating in heavy silence, as if the house itself was listening to every word. We washed the dishes and said goodbye with tense smiles. Before leaving, we insisted, If anything happens at all, anything, call us. She nodded with a tired smile, but her eyes reflected something deeper. Fear, resignation. We walked away from the house, feeling like we were leaving something behind. The last thing we saw of Julia was her silhouette in the doorway, watching us as we left. And then the door closed. Behind us, the house loomed, silent and shadowy like a patient predator. That night when I got home, the darkness in my room felt thicker than usual. I locked my door as if I could keep out the feeling that something from some unseen corner was watching me. I told everything to my mother and my aunt. They, being deeply religious, crossed themselves several times as they listened, their faces reflecting a mixture of disbelief and fear. In my mind, the doubt lingered. Should I show them the video Julietta had managed to record in her house? The video of that thing? I took a moment alone to review it. Julietta had sent it to our WhatsApp group, but until that moment, I hadn't had the courage to examine it closely. I turned up the screen brightness, but the image remained dark, distorted. A shiver ran down my spine. I didn't want to watch it, but I couldn't look away either. So I used an app to adjust the contrast and saturation. I tweaked the colors, the shadow levels, and suddenly, there it was. I dropped the phone as if it burned my fingers. The screen had revealed what was once hidden in the darkness. A gray face, with features that might have seemed feminine, but weren't human. Not entirely. The withered skin, deeply wrinkled on the forehead around the eyes. Eyes of bluish gray hue that seemed to sink into the very darkness. And that smile. It was the same one Julietta had seen that night. That smile that had paralyzed her, and the one that stretched too far, too wide, as if that thing's lips were about to tear apart. It was not a child. It was not human. A disguise, a crude attempt to appear harmless, but in its imperfection it revealed its true nature. Trembling, I sent the modified video to the group. Ah! Look closely. Tell me you see it. The blue ticks appeared almost immediately. Messages from Natalia and Camilla flooded the conversation. What the hell is that? Oh my god, that can't be real. But Julietta didn't reply. Not that night, nor in the days that followed. She wasn't online, or maybe she had decided to distance herself from all this, as if ignoring it would make it disappear. I took my phone and went to my mother. First, I showed her the original video, the one Julietta had recorded without modifications. She barely watched a few seconds before looking away, her expression twisting into a grimace of horror. Delete that right now, she demanded with a trembling voice. They could bring bad things into this house. You shouldn't have seen it or kept it. Without arguing, I deleted it right in front of her. But a thought pulsed in my mind. The modified video. I hadn't shown that one yet. That night, I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, she appeared again. Her face twisted in my mind, her smile stretching wider and wider, turning into a grotesque grimace, an aberration of the human form. I would jolt awake, gasping, feeling the cold sweat clinging to my skin. I lay still, staring at the ceiling for hours, my phone beside me, the temptation to watch the video growing inside me like a poison. My mother was right. I shouldn't keep this up. On the third night, I deleted it. I can't say if I slept better after that, but at least I no longer had the excuse to open my gallery and relive it. The video was gone, lost in space and time, but not from my memory. 11 years have passed since that night. I'm 26 now, and I still remember it with terrifying clarity, especially because I know what happened next in Julietta's house. Damn. The end. Or, to be continued. To be continued. Oh my god. Oh my god. Holy moly. Don't leave me hanging. What happens next? What happened? Shoot. Please tell me Julietta's okay. Oh my god. Okay. Well, that was I Wasn't a Girl by Constant Diamond 4627. Now, there's no telling if any of these stories are true. Oh, I know the last immortality one wasn't true, but you know, a lot of these, you know, people say they're true. They might not be. People don't, you know, claim that they're true, but they end up being true. Um, it's it's interesting. It's fun to think about. It gets your mind rolling. But I think that's gonna be it. If you guys want to hear the rest of that story, I fucking do. I want to read it right now, but I got stuff to do. Like I can't record much longer. Um, I'm excited for the rest of that story. So if you guys want to hear more, um, I might like do a special episode, like another early episode or something, because I know I hate to waste a whole week on just me reading stories. Unless you guys really like that, I'm down to keep doing it. But yeah, I guess that's gonna be it for episode 7. Is it episode 7 of Nacho Talk? 10, 8, not 10, 7, 8, something like that. I don't know. Um, again, let me know who you want on the podcast down below. If you want on, let me know. If you want more stories like this, let me know. Comment, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Save on Spotify. Rate 5 stars for your boy. Um, yeah, I guess it's gonna be it. I'll let this piano fade me out. I've never faded out by myself before. It's so lonely. Why did I read horror stories while I'm alone? Lord, have mercy.